Cool. All right. Well, everyone, thank you guys for coming to today's meeting. I'm calling it a meeting, not an event, on a discussion on mental health. Like we were talking about, midterms happened. Things may be a little bit high in stress and whatnot, and maybe we're feeling down. So it felt like an appropriate time to have the conversation. So let me go ahead and get this little presentation ready. I do have just a few little announcements to share with you guys. So first, if you guys don't already know, we did create a Discord. I know a lot of us use Discord for classes, and it seems to be one of the better ways to connect with people. I met a lot of the board members actually through Discord when I first started going to school here, so it works. So we're going to post the link in the chat. If you haven't joined the Discord already, please feel free to. We'll send it out along with the emails that we send weekly as well. But go ahead and join that. And also another reminder on this week's weekly challenge. So sharing your video at the rec center or at your home gym or at any gym that you go to, just sharing us your workouts. Whether it's on Instagram, you can tag us on Instagram at IMOXCSULB, or in the Discord as well. There is a channel for weekly participation for those challenges. So you can go ahead and share those there. It's just cool to look at what everyone does. I think at least among us, we all do a little bit different things. We got some powerlifters, we got some, cardio people, we got some Pilates people. I like Pilates. So yeah, just a fun way to, get involved, get moving in a time like this. And so, like I said, our meeting today is on a discussion on mental health and exercise, and kind of emphasis on the discussion part, because in the end, we do want this to become, like we were having earlier, a conversation amongst us all on maybe our experiences, if you're comfortable with that, of course. But we do want to create sort of a very informal, friendly, conversational vibe with this. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass the mic over to Ron.
You could move to the next slide. Okay, so originally what I was gonna do was just talk about like a bunch of articles, but I figured that would be kind of boring and I don't want to make it like a lecture because I think we're all very tired of lectures. So today I'm doing a presentation on exercising emotion regulation. I'm sorry if you could hear the bunch of noise like next to me, but yeah, next slide. So I wanted to start off with a story about one of my favorite boxers. You could go to the next slide. His name is Tyson Fury, and this was him in 2015. He recently defeated the reigning champion Vladimir Klitschko for all these belts. So he's basically the best of the best in the heavyweight division in 2015. And in this picture, he often mentioned how he was at his lowest mentally during this point in time. And looking at him, you can't really tell how much he was hurting just from the outside looking in. And basically his whole life, he's been working towards becoming the best of the best. And when he accomplished that, there was nothing left for him. Next slide. So after that win in 2015, he retired. He unofficially retired, and they stripped him of his all his belts. So within those next 2 years, he was basically, he was retired, depressed, and he was also really suicidal. And he reflects on that later during his comeback. But this was him in 2017. I think he was around like probably 350 pounds at this point, very out of shape. And it was also during this year where he decided to make a comeback into the sport. Next slide. So then in 2021, after a trilogy with Deontay Wilder, he recently, so this is him now, like probably like last week. So he definitely lost a lot of weight, and he's definitely he's back on his way towards becoming the best again. So next slide. And this was him. I think he talked about this when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast about basically what he was going through during his depressive state. And I remember a quote that he said where he just didn't want to die, like he just didn't want to live anymore. He wanted to kill himself. And just hearing those words, it's always really hard to hear, not just because for me, this is just some random guy I happen to like, but to hear someone if someone close to you was saying those words will definitely, you'll feel it a lot more. And for me to feel it coming from this random guy that I just happen to like, and just how much it impacted me, just imagine those people around you saying like how their mental health state. And you can see here, it's like he he just didn't want to live anymore. It's just very sad. But he's back now and he's doing really well. Next slide. So with that being said, I just wanted to kind of emphasize that no matter how good someone might look on the outside, there's always something else there that you can't really see. And that's what makes mental health so complex. It's these symptoms and these mental states that we can't see. So it's a really complex issue that we have that can't just be fixed through one avenue, like exercise. Like, yes, exercise is a very important tool to help with mental health, but it's not all of it. Like, we have to have a reason to want to get up in the morning. Like for Tyson Fury, he had the money, the fame, everything. But when you don't have that reason, when you don't have a purpose in life, when you don't have like I said, a reason to want to wake up in the morning, everything else crumbles down. It's similar to, I like to think about it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you don't meet those lower levels of needs, everything else comes crashing down. So next slide. So as I stated in the previous slide, exercise is a really powerful tool for mental health. And we notice as we do it and we experience it, and we know how much it elates us. And as you can see on the left, I just listed some of the benefits of exercise. But we need to understand the how. And if you can move on to the next slide. So I just have this one article titled "Acute Aerobic Exercise Hastens Emotional Recovery from a Subsequent Stressor" by Bernstein and McNally in 2017 from Harvard University. So what they wanted to do was explore how exercise would impact the negative emotions felt after a stressor. So they got these 95 people, 55 women, 40 men, around 24 years old, and they did 3 trials for each of the 95 subjects. So within these 3 trials, you would either go into the rest trial, stretching or cycling, and you would alternate as long as you would keep alternating until you complete all three cycles, I guess. So, for example, at the rest session 1, you would just go to the place and just sit there, and then they would conduct cognitive measures such as the NBAC test, which tests your working memory capacity. And what they do is they would place you in front of a computer screen, and whenever they would show a word, and if it's repeated, you click the button. And they also conducted, the other cognitive measures was the internal shift task, which tests their attentional control. And they wanted to keep people, so the subjects would mentally count the amount of words that were negative or neutral, or nouns or adjectives. And then after that, after those cognitive measures, they would then undergo the stressor task. And then after the stressor task, they waited 5 minutes, and then they completed a questionnaire titled State Rumination Questionnaire. And what rumination basically is the amount of persistent negative thinking that someone would undergo. So, for example, if I were to take an exam and I did really bad, the amount of rumination I would undergo is how much I would stress about it and just keep thinking about it after the task, after the exam. Next slide. So what they found was that for the cycling, for those undergoing exercise, which was the cycling session, their negative emotions after the stressor post 5 minutes was less than the rest or stretching groups. Specifically, high rumination led to less severe and lasting negative emotions during exercise sessions than during rest visits, with a p-value of 0.01. Also, participants were less affected by higher rumination at cycling visits than rest visits, p less than 0.01. And so on the left, they examined negative emotions by asking the participants how they felt after the stressor 5 minutes after. And then on the right, they did the same one, but this time they did it 15 minutes after the stressor, so to give them more time to ruminate. And they also did it after showing a video clip of, I think it was animals just playing around. So as you can see in both graphs, the cycling group, despite having higher rumination after the stressor, they experienced less negative emotion about the stressor. So the negative emotion was not as pervasive as compared to the rest and stretch groups. Next slide. So as for implications, they in the discussion method, in the discussion section, they explained how acute meaning is one session. Acute aerobic exercise may decrease emotional impact of a stressor because it buffers because you feel elated after the exercise, meaning that the stressor isn't as pervasive anymore. And they also mentioned how exercise induces BDNF, and what BDNF is basically something in your brain that buffers against the effects of stress by, as they said, protecting neurons from excess cortisol. And lastly, exercise increases feelings of self-efficacy compared to rest and stretching. So basically, when you complete something, you feel much more better. You feel much better about yourself compared to just sitting and then going through the stressor and stretching as well, because you just completed something. However, they also mentioned that their method of attaining the data was purely subjective through the questionnaire, the survey questionnaire that they mentioned. And they also mentioned that for future studies, more biological and psychological markers, so like legit science stuff, must be emphasized to truly understand how exercise impacts responses to stress, such as hormonal markers, etc. And as you can see on the last point, I just basically summarize what I just said right now. And I think that was all I had. Oh, and also, so next slide. So someone actually, I didn't get to read this one, but someone followed up on their study, and they actually provided some of the evidence that I stated that was needed for understanding this phenomenon with exercise and mental health. I didn't get to read it, but here it is. I don't have the link because I closed the tab, but this is it. If you guys ever want to read up on it. And that was all. Thank you.
All righty, that connects pretty well, actually. So I'm going to be taking the angle of the hormonal side of things, what kind of hormones are talked about when discussing mental health, how they're affected by exercise, and how are they connected. So before I do go into this, just to reiterate or reemphasize some of the things that Ron said, exercise is a tool, right? It's not a cure-all, help-all, fix-all kind of thing. but it's something that we can do that can help, right? And so you can take help any way you can. I say do it, right? So I'm going to be talking about just 2 hormones, some studies that were done. I did look up a few other hormones, but these were the 2 most prominent ones that I was able to find some research on. And so getting right into it, the first one is cortisol, just like Ron was talking about. So now to take a look at cortisol from a different perspective, we know cortisol as that stress hormone in the body because it's associated with the body's stress response. But it also has a lot of other beneficial factors and things that it does, like controlling blood sugar levels, regulating metabolism, helping with inflammation, and so much more. It's also important to note that we do have a very popular phrase of everything in moderation. So when we do have high levels of cortisol, you're going to get some negative effects with that. Depression and anxiety have been linked to high levels of cortisol. If you have way, way high levels of cortisol for too long, you end up with something known as Cushing syndrome. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that, but I'll explain it just briefly. It's a disorder with physical and mental changes due to having too high of cortisol levels in the blood for too long. And with that comes a whole list of negative things that can happen. You get weight gain, muscle loss, weakness, fatigue, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, as well as depression and lack of the ability to focus or think. So of course, we don't want high levels of cortisol, right? And they noticed that the study titled Anxiety Reactivity and Social Stress Induced Cortisol Elevation in Humans made a statement saying that subjects that they experimented on and they worked with had higher degrees of trait anxiety. They have higher basal cortisol levels, right? So trait anxiety is mostly the idea that anxiety as a condition is more of a personality-based thing. So it's something that's a lot more easily triggered than state anxiety would be, whereas state anxiety is more of a fight or flight kind of mechanism. So now we know what cortisol is. How does exercise work with that, right? So this study is actually called, literally, Can Physical Exercise Modulate Cortisol Levels in Subjects with Depression? So pretty easy, simple title. This is actually a meta-analysis. So they took a few, or quite a few actually, studies that looked at this particular statement and took the valuable ones, the most complete ones, and then made a conclusion off of that. So they state that physical exercise has been used as a tool to promote changes in cortisol levels in healthy individuals. However, they weren't sure if you could still get those benefits with people with MDD, and MDD is major depressive disorder. So going through those, I think they looked at 500 different articles, and I think in the end they pulled 70. They found that physical exercise does promote a reduction in cortisol levels in individuals with major depressive disorder, but like many things in life, it's influenced by quite a few factors, such as type of exercise, weekly frequency, and type of cortisol measurement. And this brings me to a point that I wanted to make at some point during this, because I kind of thought about it the other day, and it was like an epiphany, if you will. Getting into exercise and physical activity is a really big trial and error thing. Trying to find something that you like to do and something that you can stick with and something that works for you and your body, because everyone has different limitations. It is really trial and error, and I think for a lot of people that can maybe be intimidating, which is unfortunate because we know that it has good benefits such as this. So what types of exercises can be done to lower those cortisol levels? So this article is titled Exercise and Circulating Cortisol Levels. And oddly enough, opposite to what I was thinking, so this is always interesting, they found that moderate to high intensity, so 60 to 80% of a VO2 max or intensity, tends to increase circulating cortisol, whereas lower intensity exercises, so about 48%, does not result in increases, but actually decreases a little bit. So maybe for someone who is going through a high stress period, maybe it's better for them to do activities that are a lot less intense, or just like walking, jogging, cycling, things like that. We don't always have to be so intense with workouts to get the benefits that it can give, right? So walking, cycling, jogging, hiking can be pretty intense unless you take a really low trail. So that's just a brief other overview of cortisol as a hormone. The second hormone that I wanted to look at, again, another interesting one to learn about for me personally, was serotonin. And serotonin is another one that I think is probably the most heavily talked about when you talk about depression in particular. You'll see it on all kinds of little infographics, like, you know, physical activity or exercise boosts serotonin levels, which is true. But if you're like me, you kind of wonder at first, you're like, I wonder if that is actually true. And if so, by how much? So to look at the proof of it, which is why research exists, right, is pretty interesting. So we know that serotonin is a hormone that stabilizes the mood, feelings of well-being and happiness, but also helps with sleeping, eating, and digestion, which was kind of an eye-opener for me. So maybe that is for you guys too. And another thing I did include here, it also helps with blood clotting, which was also an unknown fact to me. But we also know that it helps reduce depression and regulate anxiety. So once again, everything in moderation. What happens if we have too low of serotonin levels? Low levels of serotonin can lead to depression, anxiety, suicidal behavior, and OCD. So again, different from cortisol, this is a hormone that you want to have increased, right? Whereas cortisol, you wanted it decreased. So how does exercise play a role into this? Most of the studies that are done on serotonin are actually done in rodents. So this study was called Neuromodulation of Aerobic Exercise. And this is a lot of words on the screen, so I'm going to do my best to summarize it for you guys. This study essentially was looking at how and to what extent aerobic exercise can regulate amino acid and hormones within the body. So they state that muscle activity requires uptake of BCAAs, and we actually talked about that on our Instagram for a Fun Fact Friday if you guys follow us on Instagram. So BCAAs are just 9 essential amino acids that the body cannot make. They have to be obtained through nutrition. So normally those amino acids are in competition with tryptophan, which is another amino acid that goes on to create serotonin. So those two are battling to essentially get into the brain. But with muscle activity and promoting muscle activity and uptake, so through movement, through muscle contraction and whatnot, we reduce that competition, allowing exercise to now promote the chances of tryptophan going into the brain, becoming serotonin, and then increasing serotonin levels. So again, this study was done in rodents. They found that in different parts of the brain of them, such as the midbrain, the hippocampus, and the striatum, there was an elevation of serotonin and serotonin turnover following acute and frequent exercise. And they also found increased serotonin synthesis and metabolism in the cerebral cortex and brainstem. So like I said, a lot of these studies are done in rodents. It was pretty interesting, actually. I also looked at dopamine and I couldn't find really much on dopamine, which you would think a little bit more would have been done. But nonetheless, it is a sign that, yeah, exercise can go ahead and help and be that extra boost in your day. I know for me personally it is, and I've been missing it out these last few days. So that's my fault. And then this last article, very, very superficial, if you is the right word, is literally titled Exercise and Mental Health. And what they do is they just take a bunch of different ways to look at the combination between the two, the connection between the two at a more surface level. So not really scientific, but making claims and using a lot of different articles that have done the research to support those claims. So talking about how exercise can bring physiological changes with result in improvement in mood state, self-esteem, and lower stress and anxiety levels. It can also create those positive feelings associated with mastery and self-efficacy, like Ron was talking about earlier. And although a lot of the data around this topic is taken from aerobic training programs, they found that non-aerobic training programs tend to have the same benefits as well. So again, all types of exercise and all types of physical activity can have positive effects. So with that being said, now we know a little bit of that, but I do want to now transition the conversation into a little bit something different. So this meeting is titled A Discussion of Mental Health and Exercise. So now I want to kind of segue into now opening up a conversation with our own experiences in any type of way, or questions, of course, doing our best to answer them, but to now open it up to the floor to just have conversation amongst ourselves, because I think that can be really beneficial sometimes. So to segue into that, I talked to two of my very close friends who struggle with their own issues and how they found exercise, or really mostly physical activity, to be very beneficial to them. And it's from, in my opinion, two very interesting angles that I personally had never considered before. So The first one is a friend who deals with anxiety and depression that stems from their work environment. So the work that they do, they work in the Coast Guard for the military. So they work in the Coast Guard and they deal with very emotionally heavy cases, whether it's, losing someone, not being able to find someone. For them personally, it's something that stays with them for a really long time after work hours, and he works very long shifts. So dealing with that was very hard for him in the beginning. Earlier in his life, when he was younger, I knew when he was younger, he was a very active kid through sports. And after moving and getting stationed, he got into jujitsu and weight training. I don't know if anybody here has ever done jujitsu. That'll be fun to hear about. And so here's where I think it's a bit interesting. So jujitsu for him helped with overthinking habits and learning to be calm under pressure, which I think is something that is very commonly associated with jujitsu, is that practice of learning to be calm under pressure. It also worked as a stress reliever for him, where he can release bottled up emotions in a safe environment and in a healthy way, which is also really important. If you're going to engage in some sort of physical activity to help you, you want it to be something that's safe, but also very enjoyable, right? And the interesting part for me is that it helped him socially. Sometimes I feel like we overlook the fact that physical activity or exercise can be a very social activity if we choose to make it to be. So through this, he was able to make a lot of friends in a whole new state that he didn't know anybody before. So for him, it was primarily social, but with that came a lot of the benefits that we've talked about so far, and the mastery, the self-efficacy, things like that. So I'm very happy for him. It makes me happy to see him doing a lot better nowadays. And then the second story, if you get the Spider-Man reference, is Far From Home. This is a friend that deals with anxiety, depression, and paranoia that actually stemmed from him moving rather far away from his family. His father was really sick, and so when he moved for school, he felt very useless, is what he told me, because if something goes wrong, he's not really able to be there. Again, when he was younger, he also enjoyed sports. I think a lot of us do when we're younger. We run around, do crazy things. A lot of sports, outdoor activities, but once he moved, it tend to wither off, and he found different hobbies that were a lot more sedentary. Just recently, when I talked to him, I think he had been going for about 3-4 months now to the gym. And he found that it gave him a sense of control over his life that he didn't have, that he was lacking because of his family. So now he felt like he was able to do things a lot better. And it also functioned as a confidence booster for him, but more of in a physical sense. So he had told me that, activities he always wanted to do, like scuba diving or snorkeling or kayaking, things like that, he never felt comfortable doing because he didn't feel like he'd be good at it or he'd be embarrassed about it. But now that he started, being a little bit more active in life, he feels like he's more capable to do activities and some of the stuff that he wanted to do, especially in his work, because he does labor work. So those are just, 2 scenarios of people who are able to take things like this, physical activity, exercise, either one, and to turn it around for them and use it for the better and really channel maybe angry or upset emotions into something better to better themselves. So like I said, I did want to open this to discussion. Of course, if people are comfortable to doing so. We do have questions here, but if you have any other comments that you want to make, or even questions, we can do our best to answer them. But if you guys are, comfortable talking with us and sharing kind of things, what kind of experience do you have with physical activity? Do you find that it's ever helped you in that kind of way? What is your favorite types of physical activity or sports? That's always a fun conversation to have. Again, has anybody done jujitsu? Or do you have any fond memories attached to physical activity? I was talking to Ron yesterday. We were talking about how when we were kids, we'd do weird stuff. Like I remember, doing somersaults for like hours on end in the back of my backyard for no reason. But fun things like that. So hopefully you guys are open to having that conversation. So if anybody is willing to go ahead and start that mic on that, you are more than welcome to.
I actually wanted to talk about how you mentioned like social life, that physical activity increases social life. And it kind of reminded me of the psychologist Susan Pinker. She says that to increase our longevity, that social life is very important. They've seen this in an Italian island in Sardinia, that because these older people were living longer because they're engaging in physical activity and interacting with multiple people. So just reminded me of that. And it kind of is like one thing that I've tried to put a focus on this year, because I did learn that last semester in my anthropology class. So I think physical activity does really help in increasing our social life. So I think it's really an important aspect to like kind of put in the back of your mind. So because in longevity is super important to our mental health, because I think a lot of people have that big fear that, um, the fear of like dying or the fear of not living life to your fullest, but increasing that amount of time can essentially very help someone.
It's pretty interesting too, because I've always been one to like, if I'm going to work out, I do it on my own. I always felt like, I don't know, working out with other people, I was really embarrassed to do it because I knew in the beginning I wasn't very fit to keep up with people. Like when, when you're in high school and you're taking PE classes and they have, people doing push-ups or burpees and you're like, Jesus Christ, I can't do that. But then I remember at some point I started going to the gym with a friend, and there's something about it that I think it's called social facilitation theory, something like that. When you're around other people, you tend to perform a little bit better. And so I remember at community college, I took a physical conditioning class, and it was a day after 4th of July, and no one came to class but me. And she was like, do you still want to work out? And this is, she's a strong woman. And I was kind of intimidated. And I was like, sure. So I still did it. And I surprisingly kept up somehow. And I remember leaving that day and I was like, oh, I did something good. I was so proud of myself. So things like that. Yeah, having people around, I think it's intimidating at first, but depending on what it is too, sports especially, it can definitely up the ante, up the morale, if you would say. Anybody else? Any other experiences maybe?
Well, I was actually in jiu-jitsu. I did Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 7 years myself, actually. So I did a lot of like the stuff with that. And when I was in the courses there, they were always like teaching stuff like respect and like mental health. And they were trying to use jiu-jitsu not just as like a platform for teaching self-defense, but also for mental health. But talking about the subject of doing exercise with people, I think a lot of us here, we've been in I think it was Kin 301, where we had the lab and you guys all had to do the Wingate test, and remember how when you were doing the test, you always felt like quitting, and then the whole point was that the entire class would basically be yelling at you and telling you to keep going and to push harder, and that made it so that you could actually complete the test, because otherwise, man, the Wingate test sucked. So I think that being with a partner and doing it with someone else does help a lot, because it's not sure, it's like intimidating, but having someone there to push you actually really helps you push yourself to finish it and to do more. So
definitely, for sure. And if you don't mind, can you expand on like that aspect of jiu-jitsu and the mental health? Because when I was talking to him, it's not something he's never really brought up to me. So I'm really interested. How do they go about teaching that or incorporating that?
yeah, so in the Gracie Academy, at least the one that I went to, it was the headquarters. So they were doing the classes, and I did it when I was much younger. I was I started in elementary school, and I went through the majority of high school doing it. And from the kid classes to the adult classes, because eventually I turned to adult classes, it was about respecting your partner and respecting the people you're up against, and trying to de-escalate situations with a lot of the stuff. So they were really incorporating hey, don't lose your cool, always maintain a level of control, always try to be kind. And by teaching those kind of things, it also incorporated into mental health. It was hey, don't get stressed out in situations. If you're in the situation, there's nothing you can do except move forward. Don't try to battle against the waves, or the current. Just go with it and do the best you can from there, rather than trying to fight it and getting all stressed out and seizing up in the moment. Was kind of their primary focus.
Yeah, it's a really interesting sport, because I feel like you said, it's so based on respect. And I know the times that I talk about him, he's always so excited to go to practice and go with his friends and stuff. But when I was talking to him, for him, the biggest thing was especially with his job, right? It's you're dealing with crisis events, so you need to be calm. And he's like, so going through jiu-jitsu, they teach you that, right? Don't be stressed in such a situation, because you need to think of what you're going to do next, right? Either you're going to go with the flow or you're going to make a move. Yeah, slow to anger, quick to listen. That's actually a good one. I never heard of that, Miranda. So yeah, it's such an interesting thing. And that was a really cool perspective to get from him. I did kung fu.
Nadav, I actually like when you said just go with the flow, just go with the wave, because for me growing up, I was always like, oh my God, I gotta keep everything under control at all times. Just so I have all my bases covered. I think as I've gotten older, I'm just kind of just going with the flow. And there's this quote by John Lennon that I always think of. It's life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. It's from a song, and I think that's the kind of mentality I try to move forward with nowadays. So I really like just going with the flow. Just any type of quotes like that is just up my alley.
So crazy how some of those sports can just be like applicative to life as well. It kind of makes you want to join them too.
I mean, jiu-jitsu is
like-
a lot of fun, so.
I agree with you, Ron, and I agree with y'all. I feel like yeah, like I'm a very just like I look at the bigger picture always and I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this, I have to do this, and I have to do this instead of taking like one thing at a time. And I think for myself, like for those of you who don't know, I am a competitive power lifter. So I've been doing it for like 3 years now. And I really just like got into it for like my mental health. I do suffer with mental health and depression and anxiety. And it's like, as we mentioned, it's not something like Ron mentioned, it's like you can't see it, you know, like you see me, I'm always smiley, I'm always like talking and stuff like that. But it's like a very hard on a day-to-day basis. And so sometimes for me, it's like just being able to be active. It's like the one thing that makes me super, super happy. And so it was my way of like expressing my emotions without taking it out on myself. Because I have like a tendency to just like bring things to myself very much. And so I kind of found like a healthier outlet. And for me, it was powerlifting. For me, it was just going into a gym. And a lot of the times, or for the last few years, or for the last year, I've been having like a lot of trouble just like getting into the gym. And you kind of lose like that like love for something that you love so much, and that's also really hard. And I think that's something that we don't talk about like in the part of like mental health is like sometimes you do lose the love for like something that you love and have such a great passion for, but you kind of just like wiggle your way back into it. So yeah, I agree with all of you guys. It's just like a way to like slow down and kind of just take a breather, be like, okay, feel every single movement, and you're in there. Take some time for yourself. It's your me time. You're doing everything else on a day-to-day basis for everybody else. Your classes are for yourself, but more than anything, they're like for everybody else, so it's your me time. And I think that's like for the one thing that if you take anything from it, it's like it's me time. Like literally schedule it into your calendar. This is my self-care time. This is my me time, and that whether that be like 30 minutes or 15 minutes, it's like this is my time for myself. I'm going to put my phone away on do not disturb. Not going to talk to anybody for the next like 15 minutes. And I'm just going to focus on like whatever it is that makes me happy. So that went on for longer than I expected, but that's kind of like my little take.
Yeah, no, I get that entirely. I think I felt kind of in the same boat. Like the past month or so, I'm not a morning person, but I've been trying to wake up early in the morning because usually all my classes every day start at like 9 or 8 a.m. So I'm like, let me try and get up early in the morning and get into the gym or do something. And I found that those days that I do, I feel good, which is new for me. So I was like, okay, this is nice. And then I find that I feel a lot more productive throughout the day too, because one of my biggest struggles is the motivation to even get started on a task or homework or a paper or a lab or anything like that. So I found yeah, you're a busy girl. You're a busy girl. So that was pretty big for me. And then these last few days, I haven't been going, and I find that I am just zombieing my way through the day. And I'm like, maybe I'll push that to tomorrow. I can do it tomorrow. The due date's the next day. It's fine. And I was like, it was kind of a wake up call to me. Like, I really do need that time to kind of get that extra boost of like energy in my mornings to really push me throughout the day. And plus it's like, I feel good doing something, not just for myself, but being able to, oh shit, like I squatted 105, like, okay, good job. You go, girl, you can do something, right? So those like positive feelings are always nice. I know, Sylvia, you can squat more than me, but it's fine. I'll get there one day. by the end of the semester, mark my words. But yeah, and then I remember, at least for me, I wasn't that much of a physically active kid when I was little. I was a pretty chubby little girl, and then I injured my knees, so I kind of really couldn't do much. And then earlier in the year, this year, I kind of was like, I need to take my life into my own hands. Some, health issues happened within my family, so I was like, I'm gonna take life in my own hands. I started doing Pilates 6 times a week, actually, in the middle of my days during classes. Lost 20 pounds, which I've been trying to do for years, and eventually got there. And it's empowering, almost, I think, is another way to say it. So that's always really cool. Oh, really? Yeah, there's probably a study out there about that somewhere, Miranda. Maybe I'll look for it. What about anybody else? Any other experiences you guys feel like sharing, or thoughts, comments, concerns, anything like that?
I think something that I want to mention is, and I don't know if any of y'all went to the meeting that we had on sports psychology, and how they kind of mentioned about kind of like detaching exercise and like fitness from like a punishment for yourself, right? So for myself, I kind of have again, I'm very hard on myself, and as a power lifter, I kind of have like this little thing in the back of my head, like, you're not performing how you're supposed to, you're not getting the liquids that you're supposed to. And for myself, I think I've noticed, and I am very hard on myself, and I kind of just treat it as like, I have to go to the gym. I have to go to the gym today. I have to go to the gym today at 5:30. And if I don't go to today at 5:30 a.m., then I wasn't successful, And I think a lot of the times it's the way that we use words with ourselves. Instead of having to say, I have to go to the gym today, I started reframing it as like, I want to go to the gym today. Like, I'm going to wake up and I want to go to the gym today. And that really just like shifted the way literally in the past week, how I saw going to the gym. It's like, okay, today I want to go to the gym today. So, I'm going to go to the gym today in the morning. And if I don't go to the gym, I'm not going to bring myself down and say, oh, you should have done it. Maybe I have time to do yoga instead, or maybe I'll go to a walk on the beach, something, And I think it's really important for us to kind of just like be able to like reframe those thoughts around exercise and anything like that, especially with like our mental health. We're very hard on ourselves. We wouldn't talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves. And I think that's like something to remember. So yeah, like really just focusing on, yeah, exactly, Daniel, like reframing your thoughts on a day-to-day basis, especially in the mornings. Mornings are very essential.
Yeah, I totally agree. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Having a growth mindset, my mom, she's really keen on, like, sometimes I'll be like, I'll have like so many negative connotations about what I'm doing. And my mom's like, stop having that fixed mindset. You have to have a growth mindset. So I kind of like try to implement that as much as I can. Because if you say, I don't want to do this today, you're going to dread it so much. And then when you're there, you're not going to perform as well because you're thinking about not wanting to be there and trying to hurry up your time. So I think having that growth mindset is so essential to mental health. And it's like something I'm always working on because there's always those days where you're just like exhausted. But we kind of just have to remember to be happy. And also like serotonin, if you just fake a smile, even though you're not really wanting to smile, it still releases serotonin into your life. So it's just having that growth mindset so important.
Ron, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say something in response to Sylvia, because she mentioned how exercise shouldn't be a punishment to yourself. I think that's really important because especially for kids, it's like if for PE, it's like, oh, go run a mile or whatever. It's like you're only making these kids more averse to exercising, and it just follows them throughout adulthood. So I think there's definitely much more improvement needed to be done in how we treat children with exercise. So
Yeah. To add on to that, like I totally agree with what Ron said. Because like for me, when I was younger and stuff, like a lot of I play basketball, so like for basketball coaches, they'd always make kids run, as punishment as well. And like I think that kind of affected me as well because I'm kind of hesitant to do cardio and running and sprinting and all that stuff, just because I think I personally viewed it as a punishment as well. And like I think it just makes kids hate running in general, So like I feel like just coaches and like for children's upbringing, they have to like stop using running or exercise as punishment.
Yeah, I think I have like horror flashbacks to those times.
Yeah,
So it's like-
flashbacks.
Yeah, because I think even during that sports psych meeting too, I brought up like at least in my high school, they were like, "Oh, you didn't dress out? Run a mile, walk a mile." And it's like, okay, thanks, I guess. Another, what do you want to say? Distinguishing point, um, suicides. The name sounds familiar, but I can't even remember what they are. At least what were those?
Oh,
The
oh
ones you
my
run back
gosh.
and forth.
Like
I
a
don't-
like a
But each time you run
Yeah.
to the line, you have to
Suicide
run
is
farther.
bad.
oh like a pacer test?
Yeah, like the
Kind of,
paper.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you go to the
Okay.
line, you go back. You go to the next line, you go back. You go.
See, even
was
just
a
the word
kid.
suicide, that shouldn't
Yeah.
even be a thing.
Okay.
Exactly.
I get it now. I get it now. I remember doing this, but I knew it as the pacer test, and that sucked too. It's essentially the same thing, and I hated it just as
Yeah,
much.
they changed the connotation to it because of that.
That's actually pretty funny.
I didn't actually think about that. Like this word suicides, like for running, that's so weird.
they wanted you to suffer during that. See?
Yeah, that's why they try to change it to like lines instead of suicides. But I'm like, the name's already out there. It already goes there. You know what I mean? And then a coach will say 10 suicides, and already in that moment, you already feel defeated because you already start thinking about the agony, the pain, the lungs. You know what I mean? All these things. So it's just like we're talking about, it builds that like negative connotation towards exercise and what should be something that could help build, we could argue like aerobic capacity or different things like that, like which could be beneficial towards a sport such as basketball or even soccer, because it gives you that feel of running back and forth. It's now something that's like embedded in your mind is like death. You know what I mean? And like that's not good whatsoever. So they did try to change with like lines, but it's also the same. But yeah, I agree with what everybody was pretty much saying.
It's almost like the damage has been done. And it's like you can't take it back now. Kendra, this is in response to what Sylvia talked about in terms of language, but I actually used to have a negative association with the word exercise, and what helped me was replacing it with the term joyful movement for a while. That's really great too. It's so amazing how the way you can change your thought about something, or the way you word something or refer to something, can have a difference in how you want to approach it. Like it's just joyful moment. Also, it kind of reminds me of like dancing. Like maybe dancing's your exercise, that's really cool, and I'm happy that you were able to do that. Do you do any sports or like hiking, anything like that? Because another thing I wanted to distinguish was, when you talk about exercise to anybody, I think the first thing they go to is lifting weights at a gym, which is fine, it has its benefits, but for some people that's not always optimal or preferred. But physical activity, hiking, jogging, cycling, swimming. There's so many other kinds of activities that you can do in sports that just get the same event. Do you do anything like that, perhaps?
You asking me?
Yeah, I was just curious.
I do too much, honestly. I climb, besides lifting, I climb, yoga, learning how to surf now. I think getting into cycling, it's too much.
In a way, it's almost nice to have like a variety too, right? Because like maybe you don't get bored of things so fast. So you have 4 things to like cycle between. No pun intended. So it's also nice to keep up variety and things like that too, because after a while, kind of like how Sylvia was saying, you're like losing the love for something they used to have before. Maybe you need to switch up a pace of things too. So that's really cool. Surfing sounds cool. I feel like I'd be very scared. Was there anybody
You're not
else?
scared of drowning?
I am extremely scared of drowning. Kendra, are you?
The sharks. That's what I'm saying. I'm scared of
Yeah,
sharks.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified of the ocean. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the scary thing anyways. And so I signed up.
That's crazy, but it's cool, right? Because it's almost like conquering a fear and getting a workout out of it too. There's a quote I can't remember from who, but it's like, if you're gonna do something, do it scared. And it's like, yeah, at least you get it done, right? Maybe it's not the most efficient way, but at least you got it done, right? So yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else have any other experiences or comments or anything that they want to make before we wrap up for the day?
Actually will share something too. So I'll say, like, for me, one thing, especially when I was younger, I was privileged to have like a basketball court in my backyard. My mom and dad bought me one like in second grade, and it became like my go-to for everything as I like matured. And one thing I found is that even when it comes to other like unpleasant emotions, such as like anger or like frustration or things like that, I've also found exercise to be a way of like releasing certain like negative energy or thoughts, like in some like oxymoron or like weird way. It felt good to throw something, you know, and even though it was a targeted throw with intent to actually make a basket, it felt good to hit something across the backboard, whether it was intention to make it or just to like in that moment, just toss something. Because sometimes we have like bottled up emotions and sometimes we don't really know how to verbalize, but for me, like, and it wasn't like crazy, like excessive mad breaking glass and stuff like that, but just to be able to like bounce something hard in that one moment. Or like you even see basketball players now in professional games, you know, they might have a frustration and they'll just throw the ball down really hard and pick it back up and like grip it. It's just something that allows you a moment to release without necessarily making like a big old scene or whatnot, but it gives you just enough to like excel in a way. And I found that not just with basketball, but with different things in different sports and just like exercise. Even when it comes to like cycling, I've taken like cycling classes before in the gym, and it's just like, it's something weird about that feeling of burn, that if you do have like maybe pent up emotions or something like that, you could take it out on the pedals. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you might be talking trash in your mind about whatever your situation is, or angry or mad or whatnot, or even sad. And it's just like, you could pedal it out. And so something for me at least, and I see somebody agreed as well, it's something about you using that opportunity to flesh out whatever that emotion is into that activity that you're doing. So even going back to like exercise as a tool for like mental health, sometimes those little things for me to put my energy of sadness, frustration, anger, of disappointment or whatever into something else, it's always like sometimes beneficial. And so I don't know if other people like feel that way too with certain things, but I've definitely seen it as like a great outlet and resourceful tool that always comes down to being like a 2-for-1. Like, I'm getting my workout, I'm burning at the gym or whatever the case may be, or I'm really cycling or running, you know what I mean? Yeah, running clears the mind too, because then you can just run, think, you know, all these different things. And it's actually been studied that actually report how going for a walk could actually help you, you know, reset and regroup. And so it's something that we release that allows us to like rejuvenate at the same time. It's this whole release, rejuvenate in a weird way. So yeah, I just wanted to share that and whatnot, but I think it's cool and a great tool. And sometimes I think we underestimate the power of exercise or just the power of activity. And if we change our mindset to thinking of it as activity or like joyous movement, as opposed to like that negative connotation of exercise, we'll have so many more like perks and benefits that we'll gain from it in the end.
Running is such a hit or miss kind of activity. Either you love it or you hate it, huh? That's kind of
I'll
fun.
rep out 225, but I won't run.
Yeah, I mean, Dominic, what did you do? 6 miles that last time?
Yeah.
Like,
More or
yeah,
less.
just the easy. Yeah, I think I don't know for whoever watches, going to the throwing things, at least. I don't know if anybody watches Grey's Anatomy, but I am gonna quote Grey's Anatomy, okay? Don't mind if I do. There's specific episode where one of the characters, she went through a very traumatic experience, like psychological like trauma. And her therapist had her, the whiteboard was like Velcro, and like the balls were Velcro. So it was a way of her to just kind of like release her anger in a healthy way. And that kind of just like reminded me like, wow, like you can release whatever and frustration that you feel in such a healthy way. Literally just throwing like balls at the wall, like literally just like Velcro balls to a Velcro like thing. And it's crazy how much you can just like allow yourself to feel those emotions and release them. Like let them come and release them. Acknowledge them, let them go. Acknowledge them, let them go. And that's just like, you know, we ponder on our emotions so much on a daily basis that I feel like that's such a healthy way to kind of just like, all right, I'm not gonna take it on anybody else, but let me just take it out on this wall, you know, for a second, and let me just breathe. So at least when you said that, it just reminded me of that. So yeah, I just think we kind of just like sometimes sit with our emotions and try to think about it. Sometimes you just gotta acknowledge, you know, today I feel sad about this stuff, or I feel angry. I'm gonna go on with my day. I acknowledged it. Let's move on, you know. So yeah, that just came to my head. So I wanted to, you know, mention Grey's Anatomy. It's my favorite show.
That's a very good tactic for nowadays when you can see the test scores instantly. So if you have like 2 tests in the same day, man, that first test better be good or else.
Oh, definitely for sure. I don't know if I don't know who here, if anybody takes King 462. But I was not expecting the results of that exam to be immediately after. I thought I was gonna have to wait a few days like I normally do. So then I saw the score immediately after and I was like, oh. I was like, that's how this is going. Okay. I wish I would have known that before.
But a curse and a blessing. I like seeing my score early, but I don't like seeing my score when I have more tests the same day.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's crazy. Man, you know, maybe running, yeah, maybe running isn't for you, Nada. That's really, it's unfortunate, but it's funny. A bony tumor, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
the picture.
You can
I still have the
become
X-ray of it if you guys want to see it.
The x-ray of it?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool to look at.
Yeah, here, let me go get it.
That's so crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's like the high school me that's still like, no, running is bad. Don't do it. And then if you took you know, what was it? 265, I think, with Jade Rogers, or that exercise class
263,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah, 263.
Yeah, 262.
That was a class I sprained my ankle in,
265.
by the way.
Yeah, I mean, she loves cardio. She loves running. And so because of that, she'd make you also love cardio and do running. I was not having it.
I wouldn't do it.
I
I'd
was
go like this to my phone
yeah,
at the
I
last
was
2
like-
seconds.
that's what I was
I,
trying to
li-
be
I
like.
liked it until she started doing the 20-second sprint, 10-second rest thing and whatever, the intervals. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna jog.
Yeah, when she hit the 2.5 miles, I was like, it's been a good semester. Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like there's just like too much pain associated with running. Like it's really hard for people to like, you know, keep up with it and then like eventually get used to it. So like I understand that.
Yeah. It's okay. You're our resident runner. You run for us.
I'm a casual, just runner. Just-
Hey, at least you
Miranda's
run.
over here crying.
Oh yeah, Miranda, we have 2 representatives of running. If the school ever does something with running, like a marathon, you guys are going for us, okay? Settled. I don't know. Does anybody else have any other last minute comments or any other stories or anything like that before we wrap up for the night? Oh man, I'm about to look at this X-ray. This is gonna be interesting. I saved that. That's funny.
Alexa, do you just want to share your screen? Because I don't want to download it.
Yeah, I'm trying to download it and open it. Oh my gosh, that's crazy, dude. Here, I'm gonna show
Did
Yeah,
you
it
it
was-
this.
pop out your skin? Oh,
It
I thought it was
snagged my
gonna be
IT
like a-
band. You can see that it's actually like popping out of the muscle a little bit and it snagged my IT band. It was so funny though, because when I first got the X-ray, the radiologist like ran into the room after it was done processing and he just like pointed and goes, "Look, you have a thumb in your leg."
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I thought it
Oh.
was gonna be like your actual like leg with the bone sticking
Oh no! Oh my God! Well, I mean, you could actually see it through my skin.
out. I was gonna
Like-
be like, yeah,
That's crazy.
damn.
Yeah.
I was waiting. That's what I was waiting for.
Oh yeah, no, it didn't like come out of my skin, but you could see the bump from it. It was pretty big. It was like 3 centimeters. It was
Oh,
it was
wow.
pretty big.
Oh.
That's it. It literally does look like a thumb. That's
Yeah, it
really
looks like a
crazy.
thumb. He like ran into the room. And he's like, "Look, it's a thumb."
That's so crazy. I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Like the thumb man's on that Spy Kids.
Oh my
Oh, yeah.
God!
The thumb things from Spy Kids.
I
Yeah,
was trying to grow a new hand. I don't know why.
that's really funny. Well, I'm sorry you went through that, and I hope you're better now. And I hope you've had found other ways to get physically active and not run. Because maybe it's just not for you. So with that being said, we're gonna end today's meeting. Thank you guys for coming and stopping by and just having conversation with us. One of our goals for this club is to really just have a very friendly environment to be able to have conversations like this and to also get to know you guys and make friends. For some of us, this is our senior year. So, make as many friends and connections as possible. So thank you guys so much for coming. Hopefully you guys will be here again next week, where we will have a guest speaker talking about the 4 realms of wellness, which will be really interesting and really fun. So be on the lookout for that, our emails, our Instagram posts, the Discord as well. So thank you guys for coming and have a great rest of your nights.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing.